Alright guys, Aniki here, and well, I'm pretty sure that you all read the thumbnail. You all know what this video is going to be about. Ilia Topuria, just last weekend, KO'd Max Holloway, the consensus second best featherweight of all time, maybe third best depending upon where you put Jose Aldo. And before that, he KO'd the GOAT of featherweight, Alexander Volkanovski, or maybe the second best, depending upon how you value Jose Aldo. It's kind of weird there. But what everybody is probably wondering now at this point, after cracking Max's chin and making all of Max's fanboys weep hot tears, is can Ilia Topuria become the GOAT of MMA? And personally, I think that out of all of the current champions in the UFC, all the current male champions, I think that Ilia is probably third most likely to become the GOAT of his division. And here's why. First, I think that a lot of people already think that Islam Makhachev has a better resume than Khabib, right? You know, Islam, he's beaten Volk twice. He has a win over Charles Oliveira. He has a win over Arman, even though that was quite a while ago. So he already has a win over the number one contender, right? Then, Khabib, you know, he has a win over Dustin, which Islam also has, and he has a win over Conor and a win over Justin. Those are his big wins. I guess you can also count like Rafael Dos Anjos and Edson Barbosa, but anyways, those aren't as important. And then, of course, getting back to this graphic, right? Merab, if he beats Umar, he can probably become the GOAT of his division. And after them, though, after Islam and Merab, you have Ilia. And now Ilia, unlike everybody else on this list, right? Everybody else on this list, Ilia is 16-0. He is completely undefeated, both in and outside of the UFC. He has no regional level losses. So what this gives him an opportunity to do is become the consensus GOAT of MMA and surpass the likes of GSP, Demetrius Johnson, and Dana White's favorite, the pound-for-pound GOAT, the cocaine head, steroid user, wife beater, John Jones. And as for why I included these guys and not Anderson Silva as well, you can see right here. Anderson, like John Jones, he's been suspended for drug tests, and then he also went on that big losing streak towards the end of his career. Also, Anderson lost a little bit early on in his career. But anyways, that's why I haven't included him in these top three GOAT candidates. And as for what Ilia Topuria is going to need to do if he wants to become the GOAT, well, first of all, he needs to remain undefeated. And by undefeated, I mean like completely undefeated, both at featherweight and at lightweight. Then he, of course, has to become the featherweight GOAT. He has to surpass Volkanovski. And he has to surpass Jose Aldo, right? Then he probably needs to win and defend at at lightweight, right? He probably needs to win and defend at lightweight. And then finally, he needs to not pop for PEDs. And I'll get into why that's important later. Although you can probably already guess why that's important, right? Jones. And disclaimer, I'm not predicting that any of this will happen. Ilia, he might get chinned by Lopez. Volkanovski might, do some, as Lucas Tracy calls it, he might do some crafty vet stuff by wrestling Ilia or clinching him up against the fence. Who knows? But as for right now, I think that this is the current trajectory that Ilia's career is on. And I'm not predicting for everything in this video to happen, but I'm just saying that this is what he would need to do to become the consensus GOAT of MMA. And as for factors that are currently in Ilia's favor, he's very young, right? That's the most important thing. He's only 27. He would be in his MMA prime for another 8 years. So right now is 2024. He would still be in his prime in 2032. Everything could have changed in the division by then, in featherweight and in lightweight. And I think another thing that is in Ilia, and another thing that I think is important when it comes to Ilia's, what's in Ilia's favor when it comes to pursuing GOAT status, is that he has a very marketable fight style, right? And this will help him get champ fights. Because who honestly wants to watch, let's say that Bilal Muhammad goes on, he defends the title 5 times. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's say that he defends the title 5 times. Who would want to watch Bilal versus Dricus, or Bilal versus Hamzat, or Bilal versus Caio Borralho? Who would want to watch that? But everybody wants to already watch an Ilia versus Islam, or, I don't know, Ilia versus Arman. I don't see anybody in the UFC as of now beating Islam, but who would want to watch? Everybody would want to watch Ilia do that, right? Another thing, right? He's pretty active and he promotes his fights really well, and of course, he has the skills to do it, right? He has it's not just that his fight style is very, very marketable, but he's also well-rounded. He can grapple, and it's not the boring kind of grappling, right? He properly submits people, like we saw with Bryce Mitchell. And he's also quite close to clearing out his division right now. He has a few more fights. He needs to rematch Volkanovski because Volkanovski's earned it. He needs to fight Lopez, and then he probably needs to fight the winner of Movsar versus Aljamain Sterling. And one other thing that I forgot to mention is that Ilia Topuria's fight style is probably going to age quite well, right? He doesn't rely too much on his mobility. He's quite planted, I would say. He tends to sort of march forward. He's bouncy enough, but he's not overly bouncy. He's not too reliant on his mobility. And as they say, the last thing to go for a fighter is power. And what do we learn with the Max Holloway KO? Is that Ilia has power. And power is the last thing to leave a fighter, right? So, Ilia's fighting style is also probably has quite a bit of longevity because it's very boxing focused. It's very, very power focused. So I doubt that it's something that he's going to age out of, right? And, getting on into how Ilia can surpass a GOAT, we need to first discuss why there's a debate over who the GOAT of MMA is in the first place. And I'll be doing this by, going through reasons why DJ, GSP, and Jon Jones aren't the GOAT, or are considered by some people to not be the GOAT. So first, starting off with Jon Jones, well, he's a roid cheat. He used steroids twice. Well, he got suspended for steroids twice, and then he got popped for steroids 4 times, right? So he had the pulsing picograms thing, and he also had the time when they had to move the Gustafsson rematch, right? I think from Las Vegas to California, or from California to Las Vegas, something like that, because the sanctioning body there, the athletic commission there, wouldn't sanction Jones to fight. Another thing we have to consider is that Jones is only undefeated on paper. So his record is 27-1. And that one loss comes as a result of a disqualification loss to Matt Hamill. However, the UFC tends to market him as undefeated. And they say, Jones is undefeated because those were 12-6 elbows. Those were illegal strikes, right? And I agree that 12-6 elbows should be legalized. But still, a loss is a loss, right? We still say that, we don't say that, Tom Aspinall is undefeated in the UFC because he blew his knee out against Curtis Blades. And Tom Aspinall proved that was just a fluke in the rematch. But still, it's a loss, right? And that's why Tom Aspinall is only on a 3-fight win streak right now. Another thing we need to consider about Jon Jones is that when it comes to his undefeated record, is that, he lost to Reyes, right? We all know that Reyes won rounds 1, 2, and 3, and that the judges were completely delusional and probably paid off by the UFC. God knows what was going on in their heads. But, he lost to Reyes, and then Reyes got KO'd 3 times in a row by Jan Blachowicz, Yuri, and then Ryan Spann-Decan. Now, another reason why Jon Jones, some people don't consider him the GOAT, and I think this is less of a reason, but still it's something that needs to be said. John Jones has almost always had a size advantage in his fights, right? He had a size advantage, at least height-wise, over Shogun Hua, Lyoto Machida, Glover, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen. Who else is there? Daniel Cormier, of course, in both of their fights. So he's always had an advantage there in height. And the few times where he has had a opponent who is of equal height to him, in the Gustafsson fight, the first Gustafsson fight, and in the Dominic Reyes fight, he struggled. He struggled quite a lot, right? Now, and then finally, well, not finally, but, a few other points, right? He constantly eye pokes. He might have, gone to a draw if... I'm not saying he would have gone to a draw, but he wouldn't have done as well in fights like the Glover fight or his other fights if he didn't poke his opponents in the eye. And of course, there was the illegal knee against Anthony Smith that could have resulted in a disqualification. It was just 2 points deducted in the end, but still, it's something to be considered. And then there's the other thing that he's really not the true heavyweight champion because he's not defending against Tom Aspinall. That's another point. And then finally, of course, you have, finally for real this time, he's just genuinely just an awful human being. He should probably be in prison. He's a menace to society, a menace to pregnant women, a menace to his own family. Joe Rogan continues to glaze him. But anyways, moving on to why GSP is not the GOAT. Well, GSP is much simpler than John Jones. GSP, he's lost by a finish twice. Once to Matt Serra, once to Matt Hamill. The Matt Hamill loss, that's nothing to be ashamed of, but the Matt Serra loss, that is quite bad, even though he got it back in the rematch, right? Another thing to consider is that GSP, he just doesn't have as many title defenses as John or DJ. And his GSP's middleweight belt, right? The middleweight belt, it's kind of similar to the situation with John Jones and Tom Aspinall, because the middleweight belt, at the time that GSP took the middleweight belt from Bisping, there was Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero who should have been fighting for the belt at that time. And then, similar to John Jones, GSP, he kind of got a robbery win over Hendricks, right? Just like how John got that robbery win over Reyes. Now, moving on to Demetrius Johnson, right? Why is DJ not the GOAT? Well, DJ, he's not the GOAT because he has lost time. He has lost 4 times, right? He lost to Brad Pickett and to Dominic Cruz. Both of those losses were at bantamweight, but those losses weren't avenged. And DJ, he's 1-1 with Cejudo, although I would say that the rematch was a bit of a robbery. And he lost to Moraes, right? Not Marlon Moraes, but Adriano Moraes, and won. And DJ, he proved that he was the better man in that one. But still, a loss is a loss, right? Then the other two big reasons why DJ is usually not, some people say that DJ isn't the GOAT, is that DJ's competition, it wasn't really that great. He fought prior to his prime Koji Horiguchi, he fought and KO'd Cejudo, which was a great win, in hindsight. But his other wins, they're kind of iffy, right? Joseph Benavidez, that's a good win. John Dodson, good win. But his other title defenses are kind of, iffy, right? I'm pretty sure Tim Elliott is one of them, and so is Ray Borg. So those aren't particularly solid wins compared to the likes of Jones's wins or GSP's wins. Now, what exactly can Topuria do to surpass these 3? Well, just to break it down into a few concrete steps. Step 1. Topuria needs to become the featherweight GOAT. He needs to conclusively surpass Volkanovski and Jose Aldo. And the way that he can do this, it's quite simple. He needs 4 more title defenses. Now, out of these 4 title defenses, the ones that he's going to need to get are the Diego Lopez one. He's going to need to win that one. He's going to need a win against Alexander Volkanovski in the rematch. Then another win that I think he's going to need is the winner of Movsar versus Aljamain Sterling. And the reason why I say that fight, Movsar versus Sterling, why I'm saying that the winner of that fight is because once Ilia beats Volkanovski and Diego Lopez, there really aren't any deserving contenders left in the featherweight division, right? And then, I'm just throwing Yair Rodriguez and Arnold Allen in there because, those are 2 names in the featherweight division that might be able to get a title shot once Ilia beats Lopez, beats Movsar, the winner of Movsar versus Sterling, and beats Volkanovski again. I'm just throwing those 2 in there. And personally, I think that Yair Rodriguez probably has the best style to beat Ilia Topuria on the feet, even though I think that Topuria could probably, wrestle Yair and just completely dominated him on the ground, considering what Brian Ortega did to Yair. But yes, I think that Topuria just needs 4 title defenses, and none of these guys, I think, beat Topuria. Movsar might have a chance by just, marabbing Topuria, but even then, Topuria is far too good of a grappler. So, I doubt that any of these guys will pose a threat to Topuria as of right now. Then, once he gets 4 title defenses, or even before he gets 4 title defenses at featherweight, Topuria needs to win the lightweight belt. Now, the matchup that everybody's currently calling for right now is Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. However, I don't want this matchup to happen because right now, Islam deserves to fight at welterweight. Islam deserves to fight the winner of Bilal versus Shavkat, if it's Shavkat, right? He's not. Islam's trained with Bilal, though they're basically buddy-buddy, so if Shavkat wins, Islam deserves to fight Shavkat, and Islam deserves his own chance at double champ status, because if Islam wins against Arman, which will probably happen in early 2025, Islam would deserve it. He would be the lightweight GOAT. I think everybody would be pretty solid on that point, because he would be the only guy, the only champion to have defended the lightweight belt 4 times. And that's why I don't want to see Topuria versus Islam, because it would be sort of disrespectful to Islam to get him to defend against the champion below him, twice. Or I guess in this case it would be the 3rd time, right? So, who would Topuria fight to win the lightweight belt? Would he win? Would he fight against Arman Sarukian after Islam vacates, and then Arman fights? I don't know. Arman fights Renato Moicano or Dan Hooker or Rafael Fiziev for the vacant belt. Would Ilia end up fighting one of these guys? Well, I don't think that's going to be the case, because Topuria is going to need to rack up a series of defenses at featherweight before he goes to lightweight. And by that time, I have a hunch that Usman Nurmagomedov is going to be in the UFC. And here's why. Usman Nurmagomedov has said that within the next 2 years, he's going to be planning to go to the UFC because Islam Makhachev would have finished his career. And I think that Usman Nurmagomedov, right? I think he's Habib's cousin. He's Habib's cousin, and he's on the same team as Islam and Habib. And he's 18-0. He's the Bellator lightweight champion. Probably one of the best lightweights in the world right now. And if Topuria is able to beat Usman Nurmagomedov and take his belt, and take the UFC lightweight belt from Usman, that would be just so massive for his legacy. And it wouldn't be massive for his legacy in just an objective sense, but it would also be a win over a Dagestani, one of the members of Team Habib. And I think that by itself will do a lot to cement himself as the GOAT in the public consciousness, right? It's not the actual objective quality of the win. It's the fact that he would win against a Nurmagomedov, right? And then, if he's able to do this, I think that he would next have to defend the belt against another lightweight. And I think that this would be easier than taking the belt from someone like Usman Nurmagomedov. He would be defending against Charles, like a 38-year-old, 39-year-old Charles Oliveira, or an Arman, Renato Moicano. Who knows? I don't really know who's on the up and up in lightweight nowadays. Especially one of the younger contenders, right? I don't know who, all the younger contenders like Benoit Saint-Denis and Rafael Fiziev, they've just been pushed back by the old guard. So I really don't know who's going to be there for Topuria to potentially fight. But then, if Topuria is able to defend the lightweight belt, well, I think that by doing that, the quality of Topuria's wins would surpass the quality of wins for the other GOAT contenders. I think his best wins, Topuria's best wins, specifically his wins over Holloway and Volkanovski, already surpassed Jones's best wins. Jones's best win is his first win over DC, right? The rematch doesn't count because that's a no contest. His other wins, Jones's other best wins, are probably over Shogun Rua. And Shogun Rua already lost, I think, to Forrest Griffin before in the UFC, before he became light heavyweight champion. So it's not the best win. And then Jones's other best win, and the win that aged the best for Jones, besides DC, would be Glover Teixeira, right? Because Glover Teixeira went on to become light heavyweight champion after Jones vacated. And I think that the win over DC is like equivalent to a win over Volk, but then the win over Max that Topuria has, it's better than Shogun Rua, it's better than Glover. I'm just going to say that. So I think that Topuria will have just a much better quality of wins than all the other possible GOAT candidates, right? On this list. Okay? Then, finally, and probably most important of all, to cement Topuria's GOAT status, what he's going to need to do is he just can't take PEDs. It's that simple. He just can't take PEDs, right? He can't take PEDs. He can't be like John Jones and pop for PEDs, because then, that just means that you're a cheater. And in this sport, we allow people to get away with getting on PEDs and still call them the GOAT. But there are people, such as myself, who would disagree with someone like John Jones being called the GOAT, or Anderson Silva being called the GOAT of middleweight, because of their steroid usage. And yeah, if Ilia Topuria wants everybody to end up calling him the GOAT, he's gonna have to not pop for steroids. It's quite simple. Anyways, I think this is a pretty simple list. He needs to remain undefeated, become the featherweight GOAT, win and defend in lightweight, and then not pop for PEDs. It's quite simple as for what Ilia Topuria needs to do. So, like, share, and subscribe. Otherwise, John Jones will start drag racing in your neighborhood. Bye.